Okay, year 9, so we're going to be trying something different for this lesson. So I'm going to take you through your final lesson for development dynamics. So just a quick bit of lesson preparation. If you can, in your books, take down the title, which is Geopolitics in India. Check that you've got everything that you need, so obviously your exercise book and pens. And then just to start off, I want you to answer two recap questions that are relevant for this lesson from your previous learning. So first question is, India has a border with over 8 countries. Explain one benefit and one problem of this. And then the second question is, name a TNC that invests in India. Okay, so I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that, but pause the video in the meantime. Okay, so a couple of model answers for you. Now that you've done that, is we want you to think about what kind of things you've said for that answer. So answer to question one benefit of having so many bordering countries is that India can export a lot of goods, and this increases its GNI, so gross national income. And then last lesson you should have done a piece of work about Unilever, thinking about the positives and negatives of TNCs in India. So Unilever is our example of a TNC that operates in India. Okay, so before we get started on this lesson about geopolitics in India, obviously it's important that we understand what geopolitics actually means. So in your books, you need to write down this definition. Geopolitics is the relationship that a country has with countries around it, influenced by geographical factors. So for example, water. And what that means is that all countries have relationships with countries that surround it, or internationally and globally, but they are based on geographical factors, so where your river flows through the countries that are affected by the water and so on. So take that down, put it in your book. Pause the video if you need a bit more time. Okay, so I'd like you to have a look at the two maps that I'm going to present, and just off the top of your head, using these maps, I want you to think about these geographical factors. What are the kind of things that we might be thinking about? So using firstly a physical map of India, have a look, and what are the kind of things that we might be thinking about there? So on your map you'll be able to notice that we talk about altitude. So on the key we've got green areas, which are low-lying areas, all the way through to brown and grey. So you should notice the geography of India using that key. You'll also notice that there are a number of rivers in India that are part of its physical makeup. Now I want you to think about its political situation. Okay, so jot down any ideas about how its politics, where it's located in terms of world, and how it has relationships with the countries around it, depending on the political map. So think about the borders that it has. Think about how that might affect India as a country. Jot down some of your ideas in your books. Pause the video if you need a bit more time. So we're going to focus firstly on part of the geopolitics in terms of physical geopolitics. Think about China and India tensions. So there's a video here that I'd like you to watch. It's part of the Al Jazeera news agency. I want you to click on the video link here, and I want you to watch the video. It takes about 4 minutes. Obviously, as you go through, pause the video to go back if you need to, and jot down information. During the video, I want you to think about these questions. Explain why tensions are high between China and India, and then why might these tensions increase over time? So what does the future hold for the relationship between India and China? So I'll pause this video and go over to watch the YouTube video attached. Having watched the video, I want you to, in your books, just write down your answers to those two questions. I'm going to go through a couple of explanations on the next slide. Make sure you have your ideas written down first. Okay, so if you think about our first question, why there are tension in the first place? Well, China and India have a history of tension in this region. So in the video they talked about the war in 1962, and obviously that leads to more tension these days if you've had conflict in the past. The second point is that there's no clear border. It's a very mountainous region. No one actually has said on this line of latitude or this longitude, this is the border between India and China. So it's kind of an agreed line, and people don't actually know where that border lies. So that creates some tension. Are these parts India? Are these parts China? No one's too sure. The video also talks about how China went into Indian territory, so certainly Indian territory, and started to claim land. So they were going around painting words about this is China and painting boulders in red, demarcating that was their land, and that obviously is creating tensions. And then the last thing is increased military presence. Just by having the army in those regions is going to make the other political group more nervous. So if there's a build-up of army in the region, the other country might say, okay, well, we need to build up our army in this region. And then it's a vicious cycle where there's an increase in military presence, and they're making each other nervous. So just check your answers, make sure you've got those things down in your books. And then we want to think about the future. What does the future hold for these two countries? Why might tensions increase? Well, we know that climate change is occurring. We've talked about that in the past. So with climate change occurring, there's going to be a limit to how much water is available. This water will be decreasing over time, and so water, we all need it on an everyday basis. We need it for our survival in terms of drinking and lifestyles, but we also need it for manufacturing. And so water is becoming more of a rare commodity in certain regions. Both of these countries will also be growing rapidly. We know how quickly India has developed over time, and so competition between these two countries is going to increase, and that in itself can create more tension. But so will trade. So these two countries do need a relationship. They need to get on with each other. So how much will this tension cause conflict? We don't really know. Okay, so the next part I want you to think about is the trade. So how does India have a relationship with other countries, and how does that contribute to India's relationship with those countries? USA is the world's richest country, and so we want to think about how India is having a relationship with the USA. So just a bit of exam practice. I want you to examine the balance of trade between the USA and India. I'd like you to have a PQE paragraph. So what's the general pattern? I want you to quantify it, so use statistics. And then think about any exception. Think about how trade has changed from 2000 all the way through to 2018. What's going on those things? And you'll notice that this graph is divided into imports, so the goods going to India, and then exports from India to the US. So pause the video and write your PQE paragraph. Okay, this is a table outlining some of the impacts of India's growing political links. So you'll see a number of different statements that I put on the board. Firstly, I want you to have a read through these impacts and think about what words you're unsure of. Have a look on the internet, try and get some definitions of those key words, and then have a go at step 2. So I want you to read through those impacts, and I want you to pick at least 6 that you think are really important impacts. I want you to rank them against each other, which are the most important ones. Once you've done that, I want you to pick the most important impact. And in your book, I want you to explain why you think that's such an important impact on India. how do these geopolitical links affect India and what's going to be happening in the future? Why is that so important? You might think about economic factors, social factors, political factors. All of those are really important. Pause the video, write down in your books, explain which is the most important factor for India's future. I want you to think back to that when we were talking about some of the theories of development, and we want us to think a little bit about, are these relationships a good thing or a bad thing? So we talked about Frank's dependency theory, where the West relies on countries like India for imports and exports, and that sometimes keeps those countries in poverty. We buy their raw materials, we manufacture something, and then we sell those back to those countries, keeping them in poverty. Okay, so think about how that could be a negative impact in terms of geopolitical links. But also think back to your graph of how much trade there is between USA and India. The last thing I want you to do is to have a look at the future. So India has got a big focus on the space race. There's a very nice video here by the BBC about India's role in the space race. So I'd like you to watch the YouTube video and answer these questions. So, by when do India hope to send an astronaut into space? What does this say about India? Why are they doing this? What is it? Why is it such a special thing? What are some criticisms of the scheme? How could space and satellites bring in money for India? How much is invested in the space program by India? And then lastly, do you think India should invest in the space race? So have a look at the video, answer those questions, pause this video, and then on the next slide I'll take you through some of the answers. Okay, so India hoped to send an astronaut into space by 2022. It's looking a little bit unlikely now, but who knows what happens in the future. We'll see. What does this say about India? It is a big statement to be able to send an astronaut into space. So it says that India has the technical ability to do that. It has the skills, it has the people and the knowledge to be able to do that. It's a fantastic thing. It would be one of only several countries who have done that in the past. So it's a big statement, a big geopolitical statement to other countries. Some people criticise the scheme because obviously the cost is enormous, but there's still huge levels of poverty in India. So why couldn't you use that money to help the poorest people in India? The space race is also going to help India develop. So by sending satellites into space, companies and other countries will pay to use those satellites. So it could be quite a good set of income for India. And then lastly, India is investing $1 billion into this space race. So a huge amount of money. Okay, so the last little bit was for you guys to think about whether you think it's a good policy to invest in the space race. That I can't help you with, but hopefully you found this a useful lesson for thinking about geopolitics in India. I'd love to get your feedback on whether this video is useful. Let me know. Thanks a lot. Bye.